Welcome to Core Finance, where we're joined by Guarav Sharma, who's the business editor at the International Business Times. How are you today, Guarav?
Good to be here.
Okay, well, let's have a look at your first slide, which is an excellent one, I think.
Yes, let me contextualize that. It is the end of the Petroleum Congress, the World Petroleum Congress. The oil business is once in 3 years jamboree. They call it the Olympics of the oil and gas business. And there we managed to get hold of Mr. Bob Dudley, the boss of BP. And he says something which you see right here. He says the year of $100 oil price that we saw between 2011 and 2014, and then the slide began, he says that was a bit of an aberration. Now what Mr. Dudley is saying is what much of the market is saying is that we need to adjust to a new normal, which is sort of in the 40 to 60 bracket. Having said so, which is very interesting if shareholders of BP are listening to this broadcast, is that what Mr. Dudley is saying is that his medium term, rather his short-term target, is to get BP to focus on a $1.30 break-even. It's at somewhere in the region of 50-60 at the moment, and he wants to cut that by half and hopes that technology will be the enabler.
Right, but obviously you don't want to cut costs too much, because then you might end up with the type of situation they had in the Gulf of Mexico a few years ago.
Well, I suppose you could say that. No, he didn't. But what we can say is that what he's trying to do is, and what much of the industry, by the way, is trying to do, we got the same message from Shell, from ExxonMobil, is that they'll try and use advanced robotics, get that into the equation, do the whole, you've heard the Internet of Things, now think about the Internet of Rigs, the connected rigs program. And essentially, it's not about chopping heads as much. What was coming across is like our friends in the shale business in the United States, who brought us to where we are, rather brought the whole market to where we are, the low oil price climate. They're trying to use technology to save on costs, and that seems to be the driver, which brings us nicely to where the oil price is at the moment. It's up this week. We've seen some green shoots. This is of course the futures price, but the spot price as we go live has gone above $50.
Right.
That said, I think, and where I agree with Bob Dudley, is that we're stuck in this. We're sort of stuck in this range because there are hardly any drivers tugging it this way or that. We'll come to supply in a minute, but demand is often a very ignored subject. And demand is somewhere in the region, demand growth per annum, somewhere in the region of 1.2 million barrels per day. And I think the IEA, the EIA, a lot of the agencies, a lot of the forecasters around the City of London don't see that demand pick up dramatically. It's still saying 1.2, 1.3 million MBPD next year. That said, American production, using the same old technologies that Mr. Dudley was alluding to, is sort of tipped to go well in excess of 10 million barrels per day. So we're going back to the Texan oil booms and the spike in the Dakotas in 08, 09 before.
The technology is just changing the picture. I think I read today that you're going to be using artificial intelligence to find oil now.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you probably know that far from that. And these 3D seismic that demos that we got at the Petroleum Congress was a bit like something out of Iron Man, where Robert Downey Jr. sort of twists and turns all sorts of graphics with his palm. And that's what these 3D seismic studies are doing. And what we're learning here is that the oil industry, and what we learned last week, is the oil industry is learning to do more with less. Now, one very interesting subject came up, which of course has a bearing for the price, which is the subject of electric cars. We're getting all a bit excited that the demand for oil is going to decline and all the rest of it. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, had a very interesting take. They say that it's all well and good that electric cars are rising in prominence. Last year, about 2 million EVs were sold. But that is still sort of less than 1% of the headline auto sales. Now, even if we say that the trajectory keeps improving, that all of us will be driving electric or not driving at all, just using Uber and whatever, we'll still have oil demand growth, because much of this demand growth is coming from aviation and especially from petrochemicals. If you brush your teeth, you use a petroleum product.
Right, that's a fascinating concept, one of which I was not familiar with before. But so basically, too early for the EVs to impact on the oil price. Massive capacity and new capacity coming through, either through efficiency in technology or new discoveries. I think Premier Oil had its 2 billion barrel discovery last week while you were away. The share price didn't go up as much as it perhaps should, but that's the sort of thing that's going on now. I mean, there are big discoveries being made.
Indeed, if you have exposure to energy sector stocks, I think these headline discoveries are no longer all that headline grabbing as they used to be when the oil price was sort of 115, 104, and you know we had a period prior to the financial crisis where it even touched well in excess of $140. Remember that forecast from a certain investment bank saying we'll go to 200, which never materialized?
I don't want to embarrass Goldman Sachs. They get it wrong all the time, and that's just another one. You know.
So I think
they were saying 20 as well, weren't they? So they've said they've got the whole.
Neither materialized actually. You know, neither extremes materialized.
Well, hopefully one day one of them will. You can't get it wrong all the time.
But I think we're kind of the sense that I get is if you look at the supply drivers, you look at the demand drivers. I think either you balance out the tugs. We're sort of, at least from a macro perspective, not from a technical perspective, but a macro perspective, we're sort of stuck here.
Okay, so basically, so on WTI 42.52, something like that, and that's the range, and I mean, in a way, that's what producers want. They want certainty, don't they?
Yes, and I think that's what Mr. Dudley was saying. I think that's what the Exxon boss said last week. That's what the Shell boss said last week. It's a changing world, and I think the demand driver is going to be petrochemicals. I think that's probably one area where there is no sort of substitute. Even if you take electric cars as a substitute on the horizon, there's really no substitute for what goes into cosmetics or what goes into consumables and packaging and so on and so forth. So that's where the main demand driver is. That said, there's still too much oil out there. There's too much in storage. We'll see some kind of rebalancing act towards maybe the end of the fourth quarter come Christmas, and then we might see even more stability. But I think for the moment, we're stuck with the price.
Guarav Sharma, a business editor at the International Business Times. Thanks for coming in today.
Good to be here.